The Joe Rogan Experience.
I went to the Bitcoin conference in Miami this year and just got to see and hear some really, really cool things. And the people who are like pioneering this and really believing in Bitcoin specifically, not just like the whole world of cryptocurrency, but Bitcoin itself. I haven't been excited about something like this in a really long time. And I'm not a finance guy,
Really?
I'm not a guy who grew up knowing about, financial systems and networks and stock markets or anything. And now I'm finally at a point where I'm starting to be able to like see a future for myself, and also a way to like, people like me don't really have like generational wealth, right? And I don't see how, I can really create that through fighting alone. So lately I've just been trying to understand more of like the advancement of technology and kind of where we're headed, right? Like, for instance, when I was a kid in the 1990s and early 2000s when the internet came versus now, like in that jump in my lifetime, it's night and day difference. Like I'm living in the sci-fi compared to what was in the 90s, So now just, listening to people, really smart people, even like Yeonmi Park, who you had here,
Yeah.
and hearing her and how she spoke about how like Bitcoin is actually helping save some children from like, so in North Korea, this is what she said. In North Korea, when women are taken as sex slaves and shipped over to northern China, where these guys are buying them because China has this this one child rule in certain areas, right? So if the sex slave has a child, then that child is half North Korean and half Chinese, and the Chinese won't accept them, and they can't go back to North Korea because the women kind of like escaped, right? So because of that, there's actually, what she said, are pretty much millions of stateless children who can't get birth certificates, who can't get schooling, who can't get anything, and they're either like sent to prison camps as children or killed because what are they going to do with them? China doesn't accept them and they can't go back to North Korea. So what happens, right? So there's like underground church groups that are actually taking these kids in, and because they can't use Chinese money, and they, because it's happening in China, because they can't use Chinese money, the only currency that they can use right now is Bitcoin. And so people are able to fund them so that they can at least school these kids and feed them and things like that. So from like a currency and like money standpoint, there's like a small fraction of where I'm like, okay, I see how this works. But then trying to uncover and like dive more into the whole system of how this can be implemented into just like daily society, I'm seeing more and more possibility, and it's making me more and more secure on, hey man, I can actually finally have something that I own, that's mine. Like whatever I earn is going to be mine, and you can't touch it. No one can touch it. And there's a guy, Adam Curry, who
It's a good buddy of mine.
Yeah. Podcast Index, like now they've created this thing where if you want to have your own platform and not worry about being taken down or censored or whatever, and you can also get paid in Satoshis, which are fractions of a Bitcoin, from the supporters. So you can stream your sats. You don't have to buy Bitcoin. You can create a platform where, hey, I'm speaking. If I wanted to start one and I'm like, you know what, I don't have the money to actually buy Bitcoin, but I do have a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, subscribe to my podcast, and then my fans and my followers are streaming to me Satoshis just like they would on Instagram, like likes.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So likes and replays and all that stuff is also a currency that people don't really look at it that way. But like a lot of these like companies that want to do business with me, it's like, oh, how many followers do you have? What's your Twitter engagement? What's your Instagram engagement? Oh, this video only got 70,000 plays. That's a form of currency because that's like looked at as my value and my worth on whether or not you're going to work with me or not.
Well, that's why shadow banning is so sneaky.
Yeah, man. It's like,
shadow banning is so insidious because you're limiting a person's ability to grow.
Exactly.
And they do that all the time with people.
Exactly.
I think of Bitcoin the same way I think about the early internet. I think they didn't see it coming, and now it's a viable form of currency. You can actually buy things with it, and I think the government is freaking out. I think what they're going to try to do is they tried to do some shit with the internet during the Obama administration where they were going to try to censor the internet, and it fell apart because people were furious in the uproar, and they thought the political repercussions of it were not worth it. Like the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, so they backed off of it. But I feel that there's going to come a time where some government, whether it's the United States or another government might try it first, they're going to try to implement, I know they already do it in China, but they're going to try to implement a digital currency, a centralized digital currency that they can control.
Yeah.
What's scary about that is they could say, Khalil, we've looked at, your behavior online, and you have some marks against you, and so you're not going to be able to buy this, or you can only buy staples. You can't, you're going to buy food and shelter, but we're not going to allow you to travel, because that could be a
scary.
real thing where they could literally limit what you spend your money on.
1,000%, Joe.
Open source is self-explanatory in its title, pretty much. People kind of understand what it is. It means that various coders get to share in this code and the source code, and they get to innovate, and they all get to participate and use each other's work, right?
Right.
But blockchain is confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Could you explain that?
Sure. I mean, blockchain itself is almost a misnomer. So we're confused.
Okay.
Things are confusing at every level, right? So we should start with the idea of a distributed ledger, which is basically like a distributed Excel spreadsheet or database. It's just a store of information which is not stored just in one place, but there's copies of it in a lot of different places. Every time my copy of it is updated, everyone else's copy of it has got to be updated. And then there's various bells and whistles like sharding, where it can be broken in many pieces, and each piece is stored many places or something. So that's a distributed ledger, and that's just distributed computing. Now, what makes it more interesting is when you layer decentralized control onto that. So imagine you have this distributed Excel spreadsheet or distributed database. There's copies of it stored in 1,000 places. But to update it, you need like 500 of those 1,000 people who own the copies to vote, yeah, let's do that update, right? So then you have a distributed store of data, and you have like a democratic voting mechanism to determine when all those copies can get updated together, right? So then what you have is a data storage and update mechanism that's controlled in a democratic way by the group of participants rather than by any one central controller. And that can have all sorts of advantages. I mean, for one thing, it means that, there's no one controller who can go rogue and screw with all the data without telling anyone. It also means there's no one who some lunatic can go hold a gun to their head and shoot them for what data updates were made, because it's controlled democratically by everybody, right? It has ramifications in terms of, legal defensibility. And I mean, you could have some people in Iran, some in China, some in the US, and updates to this whole distributed data store are made by democratic decision of all the participants. Then where cryptography comes in is when I vote, I don't have to say, yeah, this is Ben Goertzel voting for this update to be accepted or not. It's just ID number 13572664, right. And then encryption is used to make sure that it's the same guy voting every time that it claims to be, without needing like your passport number or something, right?
Well, what's ironic about it is it's probably one of the best ways ever conceived to actually vote in this country.
Yeah. Sure,
it is kind of ironic. Right?
There's a lot of applications for it. That's right. So that's the core mechanism. Though, where the blockchain comes from is like a data structure, where to store the data in this distributed database, it's stored in a chain of blocks where each block contains data. The thing is, not every so-called blockchain system even uses a chain of blocks now. Like some use a tree or a graph of blocks or something.
Is it a bad term? I mean, is there a better term?
It's an all right term.
Is it like AI? Like just one of those terms we're stuck with?
Yeah. It's one of those terms we're stuck with, even though it's not quite technically accurate. And I mean, anymore. I mean, because I don't know another buzzword for it, right? What it is it's a distributed ledger with encryption and decentralized control.
Yeah.
And blockchain is the buzzword that's come about for that. Now, what got me interested in blockchain really is this decentralized control aspect. So my wife, who I've been with for 10 years now, she dug up recently something I'd forgotten, which is a web page I'd made in 1995.
Whoa.
Like a long time ago, where I'd said, hey, I'm going to run for president on the decentralization platform, right? Which I'd completely forgotten that crazy idea. I was very young then. I had no idea what an annoying job being president would be, right? But the idea of decentralized control seemed very important to me back then, which is well before Bitcoin was invented, because I could see, a global brain is evolving on the planet, involving humans, computers, communication devices, and we don't want this global brain to be controlled by a small elite. We want the global brain to be controlled in a decentralized way. So that's really the beauty of this blockchain infrastructure. And what got me interested in the practical technologies of blockchain was really when Ethereum came out, and you add the notion of a smart contract. What's
Ethereum?
Ethereum, yeah. So
what is that?
Well, so the first blockchain technology was Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a well-known cryptocurrency now. Ethereum is another cryptocurrency, which is the number 2 cryptocurrency right now.
That's how out of the loop I am. Did you know about it? You did?
However, Ethereum came along with a really nice software framework. So it's not just like a digital money like Bitcoin is, but Ethereum has a programming language called Solidity that came with it. And this programming language lets you write what are called smart contracts. And again, that's sort of a misnomer, because a smart contract doesn't have to be either smart or a contract, right?
Oh,
but it was a cool name, right?
Right. What does it mean then? If it's not
really
a
smart contract, it's like a programmable transaction.
Okay.
So you can program a legal contract, or you can program a financial transaction. So a smart contract, it's a persistent piece of software that embodies like a secure encrypted transaction between multiple parties. So pretty much like anything on the back end of a bank's website, or a transaction between two companies online, a purchasing relationship between you and a website online, this could all be scripted in a smart contract in a secure way, and then it would be automated in a simple and standard way. So the vision that Vitalik Buterin, who was the main creator behind Ethereum, had is to basically make the internet into a giant computing mechanism rather than mostly like an information storage and retrieval mechanism. Make the internet into a giant computer by making a really simple programming language for scripting transactions among different computers and different parties on the internet, where you have encryption and you have democratic decision making and distributed storage of information like programmed into this world computer, right? And that was a really cool idea, and the Ethereum blockchain and Solidity programming language made it really easy to do that. So it made it really easy to program like distributed, secure transaction and computing systems on the internet. So I saw this, I thought, wow, like now we finally have the tool set that's needed to implement some of this.
How popular is this?
It's very popular.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, almost every ICO that was done the last couple of years was done on the Ethereum blockchain.
What's an ICO?
Initial coin offering.
Oh, okay. So for bitcoins,
Bitcoin.
I'm sorry, cryptocurrencies.
Cryptocurrencies,
so
yeah.
they've used this technology for offerings.
So what happened in the last couple of years is a bunch of people realized you could use this Ethereum programming framework to create a new cryptocurrency,
right,
like a new artificial money, and then you could try to get people to use your new artificial money for certain types of.
How many
of
artificial coins?
Thousands now. It may be more. I don't know, yeah.
And
but
the,
I mean,
the
how
most
many?
popular is Bitcoin, right? Or the
Bitcoin is by
known,
far the most popular.
the most
Ethereum
used.
is number 2, and there's a bunch of others. I mean,
What comparison? Like, how much bigger is Bitcoin than Ethereum?
I don't know, factor
Five times as
of
big?
3 to 5. So.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. Maybe just a factor of 2 now. It's actually last year Ethereum almost took over Bitcoin.
When Bitcoin started crashing?
Yeah. Now Ethereum is back down. It might be half or a third of Bitcoin.
Does that worry you, the fluctuating value of these things?
Well, to my mind, creating artificial monies is one tiny bit of the potential of what you could do with the whole blockchain tool set. It happened to become popular initially,
right,
because it's where the money is, right? I mean,
right, it is money. Yeah.
It is money, and that's interesting to people.
Yes.
But on the other hand, what it's really about is making a world computer. It's about scripting with a simple programming language all sorts of transactions between people, companies, whatever, all sorts of exchanges of information. So, I mean, it's about decentralized voting mechanisms. It's about AIs being able to send data and processing for each other and pay each other for their transactions. So, I mean, it's about automating supply chains and shipping and e-commerce. So there's in essence, just like computers and the internet started with a certain small set of applications and then pervaded almost everything, right?
Yeah.
It's the same way with blockchain technology. Like, it started with digital money, but the core technology is going to pervade almost everything, because there's almost no domain of human pursuit that couldn't use, like, security through cryptography, some sort of, participatory decision making, and then distributed storage of information, right? So, and these things are also valuable for AI, which is how I got into it in the first place. I mean, if you're making a very, very powerful AI that is going to, gradually, through the practical value it delivers to you, will grow up to be more and more and more intelligent. I mean, this AI should be able to engage a large party of people and AIs in participatory decision-making. The AI should be able to store information, in a widely distributed way. And the AI certainly should be able to use, security and encryption to validate who are the parties involved in its operation. And I mean, these are the key things behind blockchain technology. So, I mean, the fact that blockchain began with artificial currencies, to me, is a detail of history, just like the fact that the internet began as like a nuclear early warning system, right? I mean, it's good for that, but it's as it happens, it's also even better for a lot of other things.
Do you have "Don't Be Evil" in the Cash App's code of conduct?
No.
Maybe we should take it. It's open. It's free now.
One of our like equivalent operating principles within Cash and Square is how do we understand someone's struggle? Like, how do we understand, how do we have the empathy for, what they're struggling with? And, when it comes to finance, they're struggling with a lot.
Yeah.
Typically, they're struggling with a ton.
What was the thought process with, one of the things that's kind of cool about the Cash App is that you can buy and sell Bitcoin with it.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to consider other forms of cryptocurrency as well?
Not right now. So, back to the internet, I believe the internet will have a native currency.
Really?
It'll have a native currency. And I don't know if it's Bitcoin. I think it will, because just given all the tests it's been through and the principles behind it, how it was created, and, it was something that was born on the internet, that was developed on the internet, that it was tested on the internet. It is of the internet. And the reason we enabled the purchasing of Bitcoin within the Cash App is, one, we want to learn about the technology, and we want to put ourselves out there and take some risk. We're the first publicly traded company to actually offer it as a service. We're the first publicly traded company to talk to the SEC about Bitcoin and what that means. And it made us uncomfortable. We had to really understand what was going on, and that was critical and important. And then the second thing is that we would love to see something become a global currency. it enables more access. It allows us to serve more people. It allows us to move much faster around the world. And we thought we were going to start with how you can use it transactionally, but we noticed that people were treating it more like an asset, like a virtual gold, and we wanted just to make that easy, like just the simplest way to buy and sell Bitcoin. But we also knew that it had to come with a lot of education. It had to come with constraint because, 2 years ago, people did some really unhealthy things about, purchasing Bitcoin. They maxed out their credit cards and put all their life savings into Bitcoin. So we developed some very simple restrictions and constraints, like you can't buy Bitcoin on the Cash App with a credit card. It has to be the money you actually have in it. And we look for day trading, which we discourage and shut down. Like that's not what we were trying to build. That's not what we were trying to optimize for. We made a children's book explaining what Bitcoin is and where it came from and how people use it and where it might be going. So we really tried to take on the role of education and to have some like very simple, healthy constraints that allowed people to consider what their actions are in the space.
Now, when you have something like the Cash App, which is it's very much a disruptive technology in terms of like decentralization of banks and currency, and to have it where everything is going right at, you're direct depositing a paycheck right in the app if you so choose, and then you could also buy Bitcoin, which is another disruptive technology. I mean, this is another step towards this sort of new way of doing things.
Yeah.
And is there pushback from any companies, or is there?
Oh yeah. I mean, like you just look at like some of the major banks and their consideration around Bitcoin. They all love blockchain because of the efficiencies it can create for their business and potentially new business lines. But I think there is
explain blockchain to people, for people who don't know what we're talking about.
Blockchain is a distributed ledger, and what that means is that it's basically a distributed database where the source of truth can be verified at any point around the network. And you can see, this annotation around how content or how around money like traveled.
So you don't have to go to an institution to get the records.
There's no centralized check. There's no centralized control over it. And I think that is threatening. It's certainly threatening to certain services behind banks and financial institutions. It's threatening to some governments as well. So I just look at this and like, how do we embrace this technology, not react to it in more from a threat standpoint, but like, what does it enable us to do, and where does our value shift? And that's what we should be talking about right now, is like how our value shifts. And there's always really strong answers to that question. But if you're not willing to ask the question in the first place, you will become irrelevant, because technology will just continue to march on and make you irrelevant. And it's the people that like are growing up with this technology, or born with the technology, only knowing that technology, or are asking the tough questions of themselves that they're going to be super disruptive to their business. And they're thinking about it right now, and they're taking actions. And we're doing that at Square, and we're doing that at Twitter. And like that to me represents longevity. That represents our ability to thrive. And we got to push ourselves. We got to make ourselves uncomfortable, and we got to disrupt what we held sacred and what we think is success today. Because otherwise, it's not going to be bigger than what we have today.